and welcome to another episode of Green Diamond Boxing. My name's Aiysha, and today I'm here in person, as you can see, with none other than Radio Rahim. Hello, Radio Rahim. How are you today?
Hello, Aiysha. We are sat in this beautiful park on a Saturday, a fight night Saturday nonetheless. And as you see, I'm doing my road work. I'm out on the roads getting these miles in, kilometers as you might say. But I don't know anybody else that would have gotten me to take a stop and do an interview on a Saturday other than you. So credit to you for that. I'm appreciative of your content and your hard work making your way into the boxing journalism field. So I decided to stop and have a chat with you.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. I know you're a very, very busy person and you've got to rush somewhere after this, so let's make it quick. Can you just tell me a bit about growing up? Obviously, you were born in America, you grew up there. Can you just give our viewers a bit of a background to yourself and becoming Radio Rahim?
I grew up in Oakland, California, so that is the west coast of America, the northern side of California. And I went to a performing arts elementary school and high school, so I was doing like theater and acting and taking the stage in that regard. And on my high school campus, we had a radio station in the basement that was dormant, but we had this huge tower on top of the high school. And I inquired one day about what the tower was for, and I learned that it was the tower that fed the radio station that we clearly weren't using. So I went down there, asked faculty for permission to see if we could light it up. So, flicked it on and kind of like an 80s coming of age movie or something. And all the lights went on and through the thick dust, and turned out the equipment worked. The tower was able to give a broadcast signal up to about 5 miles, which in Northern California is a good 3 different cities, because these cities are small but very close next to each other. So it came to be a little kind of local broadcast I would do after school. And so that's when I started my broadcasting career, I guess you could say, in high school. And Radio Rahim was a bit born in that. There's something to be said for, I guess, the way I speak, especially for a high school kid in a black community, was unusual. So it wasn't really a term of endearment initially. It was more a way to tease me about the way I spoke. But then I decided that I would just use it and keep it, and now everybody knows Radio Rahim, and nobody can remember those guys that were teasing me. I can't remember their names for the life of me.
Probably a good thing.
I found my way to Wildcard Boxing Gym in Los Angeles after high school, and for those who don't know, Wildcard is Freddie Roach's gym, and it is now the famed Wildcard because Manny Pacquiao began his American career there under the tutelage of Freddie Roach, and I was there at that time, but before Pacquiao actually. So first time I interviewed Pacquiao was like on a air conditioning system inside the Vagabond Hotel, which was next door to Wildcard, which was aptly named the Vagabond Hotel. And there was about 7 other Filipinos. They were sharing a room. And I would shoot his training up at Griffith Park, his running, his sparring, his, famous 1,000 sit-ups. And what I learned many, many years after, when he fought in Macau, there were all these Filipino fans of mine in Macau, because there's a lot of Filipino people there, and I wasn't sure how they were all recognizing me. I mean, obviously I'd been covering Pacquiao for a long time at that point, but still. Mm-hmm. And then somebody came up to me and had me sign a DVD, and then I looked at the DVD and I realized that these DVDs that everybody was having me sign were taken from the internet. From Pacquiao's early days, they were taking my videos that I was putting up online of his training and turning them into DVDs that they were selling on the streets in the Philippines. So I got famous, particularly there in that way. So that was a big moment, I guess, early on that got me entrenched in boxing. And then I created a show called Gym Wars with Doug Fisher, who's now the editor-in-chief of Ring Magazine, and we would commentate sparring sessions that I shot in Wildcard of world-class fighters, champions getting prepared to defend their championship and challenge for championships. So, these are marquee fighters, and at the time, nobody was shooting their sparring sessions. Nobody was studying tape and certainly nobody was putting it on the internet. So we put it on the internet as if you were watching an HBO, primetime boxing match or something. We commentated it, and then as the show expanded, got more popular, I started to interview fighters in the gym around their sparring sessions, and then that took on a life of its own. And then after a while, people got savvy to the internet, and they thought that they were reinventing the wheel or something and didn't want sparring sessions on, so it was more difficult to shoot these gym war episodes. So I just started doing the interviews with the fighters, and that took on a life of its own in a way, and that is kind of like how boxing journalism of that fashion that is so common now began. So Max Boxing was the name of our outlet at the time, and I merged with Seconds Out, which was over here in England, and that's how this whole thing kind of came to be. But before any of these YouTube channels or any of that was Max Boxing, and I was doing interviews with fighters like that in the locker rooms, ringside, in the gyms, before there really was an online community reporting on boxing. So, I began this, and now it's much too late to get out.
When was that started then? How many years was that when you were started doing the interviews for the boxers?
It was early 2000s,
Wow.
I'm in wildcard, this is high school years for me when I'm just beginning. So, yeah, it dates back that far, like turn of the century.
So you've been doing this a very long time, and in that time, you have done loads and loads of interviews for many, many people. Tell me one or two that are standout interviews for you, or, experiences that you've had that really stand out for you.
Well, the controversial ones are going to be the ones that make the most impression on the audience and will have the most reaction for longer periods. So I'll point those out because those are the fan favorites. Not necessarily like the ones, that in the moment I enjoyed the most or, looked the most forward to, but they're the ones that I'm most reminded of. I'd say Victor Ortiz after the controversial Mayweather fight where Mayweather, knocked him out while he was trying to give Mayweather a hug. But subsequent to this, somewhat controversial knockout was Victor Ortiz headbutting Mayweather, which is what started the whole breakdown of the fight in the ring. And then he admitted in an interview with me that he was trying to break Mayweather's nose by headbutting him. And then the commission stripped him, or suspended him, I should say, and fined him. And they used my video as evidence of his intentional foul. And so that at the time was huge news. And, of course, Victor blamed me for what he said, which is always the case, There was a Virgil Hunter interview out there that fans love to bring up. There's a bit of a contentious back and forth with he and I over Angulo, who was about to face Canelo. And I thought that was a terrible, terrible choice. I thought that Virgil Hunter as a trainer should not put his fighter in that kind of peril. I was making the case that this is just, you got to protect your guy. He's a terrible guy. So then he went on to obviously take exception with that. And we went into a huge back and forth about that. And of course I was right. It was a terrible fight for Angulo. He got hurt. I don't think he should have been fighting after or, after that, or certainly I don't think he should have had that fight. So, but the back and forth between he and I was quite legendary, because Virgil has this kind of uncle wise man kind of approach. So I think he took umbrage at my challenge. And so if you want to go find that one, that's for the old heads. And then, of course, Till This Day, which is going to be the most popular,
It's going to follow you around for the rest of your life, isn't it?
Well, let's hope so. That means that at least somebody's still paying attention for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But that one, of course, had the most reaction. At that point, social media is what it is.
Yeah. How did you feel in that time, though? When he was having that back and forth with you, and obviously at that moment in 2018 when you were talking to him, how were you feeling in that moment? You were like, oh my God, I've pissed him off? Or were you quite
No, I didn't know he was mad at me. Took me a while to figure that part out. I thought we were mad at white America. I didn't know that I was becoming the target. So I was having a good time.
Yeah.
And then when I realized, he was mad at me, I was like, well, that's when I was like, not everybody knows what you're talking about. I think he was very unaware in the moment of how big a stage he was on and how everyone in the audience wasn't an American, much less a black American, who would just understand the reference of 400 years, right? Which was the point of the question. So instead of being able to articulate that and give that explanation that I was hoping would be shared around the world from his very unique, at least globally unique, perspective of an experience of a black American from Alabama, no less, contrasting a British fighter who's talking about the 200 years of his family lineage being fighters. Yeah. They're talking past each other. They're talking about two totally different things. So where the world might have more of a reference point for what Fury is talking about, certainly British people in the United Kingdom, citizens would know that he meant as a gypsy, his people, being the Furies, had been fighting for 200 years, meaning bare-knuckle brawling. Yeah. And when Wilder said his people had been fighting for 400 years, they might mistake him to mean Wilders had been boxing for 400 years. And so I wanted him to make that distinction. And he thought that I was pretending to not understand what he was saying. And then he went on the attack with me. But the effective goal was reached was that it became a conversation. And ultimately people did understand what he and I were talking about. But, there's a lot of attacks on me. There's a lot of misunderstanding about my intention. And, all of that fed into this iconic moment now in boxing. But, all's well at the end because I think the conversation was had. So
thinking back to that, would you probably have worded that question slightly differently then? Like giving a bit of a, for other people outside of America who might not understand what you mean by the 400 years,
No.
would you have done that? Or
no.
you like...
You know why? Because fair enough, this was better ultimately.
Yeah.
Way more people became aware of this moment because he reacted that way than if he had given a reasoned response. And I'm not even sure if I had said that he would have had the words to articulate something as profound or that would have gotten as much attention if I had worded the question more elaborately. I thought we had a bit of a shorthand, but I guess not. And so again, things happen for a reason. And do we still have that kind of viral moment if we just have a reason back and forth? No, I don't think so, because a year prior we were sat together in Belfast. We had a whole conversation about that very subject, which is why I would have thought he knew where I was coming from. And it did well. We're talking about maybe a couple 100,000 views, but not the millions that moment created.
No, absolutely. Wow. I mean, as someone who was born and brought up in the UK, I think I would have understood Wilder's 400 years more so even than I would have understood Fury's 200 years, just because I guess it just depends on the person and what, information they have, what knowledge they have, what kind of research they like to do. So yeah, I guess just different for different people. But it was really nice to hear your explanation of it on the podcast that you've been on and explaining that scenario. Sticking with Deontay Wilder, obviously we saw him in Saudi against Joe Parker, didn't do too well against him. He blamed it on jet lag. He blamed it on some herbal thing that he took. Do you think he will be back the way he was previously on this next fight against Zhang coming up?
Well, I hope not. If he hasn't learned and bettered himself, that would be a damn shame. I hope he's never back the way he once was. I hope he's better and more prepared for this level of competition. I think he's a work in progress and a student of the sport in a way now that he once thought futile. I think boxing teaches us all some humility. And it came time for him to learn the skills and fundamentals, and he's got the right trainer for that. I mean, Malik Scott, to me, is a genius, a passionate teacher of the sport, not just a coach or a cheerleader, but he really does teach the sweet science, and is necessary if you're going to have a long career and stay at the elite level, for you to understand the fundamentals and be able to execute technique in boxing. It's just, that's a reality. And you can get away with talent, you can get away with hard work, you can get away with a big right hand for as long as you can. And I think he took one big right hand further than anyone's ever taken a single punch. So credit to him. And that doesn't diminish anything he's done. But if he wants to take this journey further and to higher heights than he's reached yet, it's going to require more skills. It's going to require him to better his ability in the ring to be effective beyond a big right hand. And so I think Malik Sky is the guy right to teach him that. I think he was in tough last time and the time before, and every time with Fury. All those can be learning experiences. I don't take anything away from a fighter who is bested on the night, but, is willing to go back to the drawing board and come back better. So, at this level, you shouldn't be able to easily remain undefeated, and you should be able to return and give that same fighter who challenged or beat you the last time a better look, a different look, a more difficult challenge than the first time. And I think that's exactly what he'll do, even though he hasn't fought Zhang before. I think Zhang had been coming off a loss as well. I think they were both kind of bested with technique. Like Joseph Parker had the right game plan. They weren't either able to adjust to it. They were both kind of relying on a big one-punch knockout. Zhang almost got it. I don't think Wilder got it close. And so this time, facing each other, one or the other is going to have to elevate their skill level and prove that they're more than just a one-punch fighter, that they're a technically proficient boxer. And whoever does that will win, because they both have the heart, they both have the heavy hand, they both have, the champion spirit. Even though Zhang hasn't become a world champion, I think he has the spirit of a world champion. But now one of them has to elevate beyond what their skill set has been to this point. And, only on the night can we find out who that's going to be.
What's your prediction?
I predict that one of them will be better than the other one.
You're not going to give me a winner.
Well, I can't give you a winner because I'm neither one of these guys, and it hasn't happened yet. See, here's the fallacy about boxing and all these predictions. I roll my eyes when guys will tell you, who's going to win it. I can tell you after the fact how they won. Yeah. But on the night, who shows up is the experiment. Like, these two elements have never been together before. That's why they call it a science, because we have two unique elements. And on this coming Saturday night, you will see them react to each other in real time for the first time. Yeah. So we, the scientists, might give our prognosis and this element usually reacts this way and that element reacts that way. And when mixed with these kind of conditions, it will transform into this or that. But what we know for sure is that we don't know. So I'm far more now interested in the analysis of what's happened while it's happening and once it's finished than I am in pretending as though I can predict the future based on what I've seen in the past. Yeah. Because not only are these two elements coming together for the first time, but who they are on the night will be a first-time experience. Like, the Wilder that shows up this Saturday would not be the same guy as if it were this Saturday next. Like, you don't know what's going on in his head. You don't know if, this is hurting this week that wouldn't be hurting next week. You don't know the focus. You don't know what tweaks these guys. And then, any fighter will tell you boxing's 80% mental. If that's the case, every single day we wake up in somewhat a different headspace and can be tweaked by any number of things. So we got to see. And, I'm happy for these people who pretend like they know, but every single time there's an upset, it reminds you that nobody knows shit about boxing, really. So you better stick with the science, and that is something that we analyze post-fight.
Yeah, so talk to me about the Jabber AI then, which obviously you've spoken about before on some other podcasts, which analyzes people's punching power and their, how many punches they throw, how many they land. Talk to me about that, and obviously the launch on the Undisputed fight.
Well, to that point, we put the science in the sweet science. It's about time that we could really take a factual look at what's happened in the ring. We've never even had the ability to accurately, and by we, I mean the boxing community, know how many punches were landed, the quality of the punch that was landed, be able to differentiate between a clean shot and a partially blocked shot, to be able to manage the metrics for, what we call ring generalship, right? Which can be defined differently depending on who you ask. So with jabber, we were able to break down what we believe constitutes that, which is pressure and aggression, but the mix of the two. But those two things are not the same, right? So for instance, pressure is who's coming forward in a fight as opposed to who's backing up, who's closing the distance as opposed to who's widening the gap. But just because you're bringing pressure doesn't mean that you're the more aggressive fighter. It just means that you're closing the gap and potentially forcing the action. But the person who throws the first punch when the gap is closed, well, that is the actual aggressor. That is who's actually pressing the action. So that is an aggression metric. So we differentiate between the two. So if you're closing the gap, you'll get the pressure points. If the other fighter is throwing the first punch, he's getting the aggression points, which offset your pressure points. So a fighter can fight off the back foot and not be penalized for that if he is in fact being aggressive. He's throwing the last punch in a combination. Again, you'll get aggression points. The difference between throwing one punch and combination punches. We're able to look at that metric. We know the amount of combination you've thrown, how many punches in the combination you threw, how many of those punches in the combination actually land, as opposed to just like kind of shoe shining on people's guards, and judges get impressed by that because of a flurry of punches where maybe none of them got through. So the ability to have all of these metrics and analyze the fight for every punch, every step, every second, and the quality of the shot, that gives us a real story of the fight. First of all, you can watch these metrics without even seeing the fight and have an idea of what the narrative of the fight was. But even more importantly than that, you have accurate, factual basis for whatever argument you want to make. I'm not telling you how to score a round, but I am telling you that you should score it on these bases. And what you give more credence to, that's still up to the judge. But what actually happened is no longer in dispute. You have facts now to base these opinions on, and these criteria that every judge still has the discretion to make on their own can now at least be measured against what factually happened in the ring based on these statistics that Jabber is able to generate.
Do you think that this can be used against any fights in future where people might go, this was a robbery or this was not scored properly? Do you think that this is something that could be used to either support or go against scoring, do you think?
I mean, I'm not here to support or go against any scoring. I'm just here to provide a factual basis for whatever argument you want to make. Like, there is still a lot of discretion, as much as there ever was, in judging as to what the criteria to judge a round is, right? I don't have any effect on that. All I'm saying is, here's what actually happened. And so since we don't have to now question anymore, like how you saw it as versus how I saw it, this judge was on that side of the ring, that judge was on this side of the ring, this judge has hay fever, can't barely see, you know what I mean? This judge is being influenced by the crowd noise, this judge is daydreaming. All of that out the window when it regards to how many punches are landed, the quality of those shots, who's applying pressure, who's applying aggression. You know, we have a dominance metric. How many punches are thrown as opposed to how many punches are actually landed. A lot of times punches are thrown and miscounted as landed shots, and sometimes punches are landed and not counted at all because it's still based on human error. There has never been any system that was outside of human-produced punch stats based on people eyeballing and saying that they saw this ever. So now we're looking at a system that every single camera in the building that is trained on the fight is going to a AI system that is watching each camera simultaneously in real time from every angle at once and counting and calculating everything that's happened. It doesn't have a favorite fighter. It isn't from a certain country. It doesn't get tired. It's not affected by crowd noise. It doesn't care about who wins. It is just calculating what happened. So that is as objective a so-called, I wouldn't even so-call it a judge. That is as effective a scoreboard as you can ask for. It's like this. Imagine if you were watching a football match, like at the highest level, and at the end of the third period, 3 judges got together and decided who won by who they think played harder. But you had the number of goals scored. Well, we have a scoreboard now. We have the number of goals scored. Now, you can tell me who you think played harder. If your criteria means that they won because they played harder, well, okay, God bless. That's the way the system works now. But I'm going to tell you how many goals were scored,
Yeah.
and you can tell me your
Yeah.
criteria for who won.
Okay. And how do people see that? You've got a YouTube channel for that, right?
Jabber AI is a platform that they can visit. There's also Jabber AI on YouTube for sure. We'll be all over socials, but I would encourage people to go to the platform because there's even more there. And then during the fights, you can go to Jabber AI on YouTube and watch them auto-populate in real time. So you can second screen the fight now. Like you could be watching the fight on whatever network you watch, whatever TV or computer app you watch it on. But then also on your phone or your computer, you got Jabber going and watching the stats happen in real time. So as soon as a round is over, you have all your metrics. As the punches are being landed, they're being counted. So you have an ongoing scoreboard and varying metrics by which you could, at the end of the round and then subsequently at the end of the fight, make your own scorecard.
Yeah.
We debuted on TNT Sports Box Office. So that was the first network to put Jabber on network, which was brilliant. We'll be there again on June 1st for the 5v5 and the light heavyweight championship fight. So it's very, very encouraging, I think, for the boxing fan and the community at large of broadcasters, trainers, and fighters to know now that they have a reliable, consistent, objective metric by which to determine what exactly happened during the fight. And we now have an ongoing system that hopefully all broadcasters across all networks and all apps that produce boxing for the audience will take part in, giving that audience the objective ability to have a statistical metric and post-fight accurate stats for exactly what happened during the fight. And we are not judging that fight. That is still up to the commission. It's still the same system that you had before. But the difference now is that you have something objective by which to compare the judge's analysis to. And that, I think, is revolutionary in the sport. And again, TNT Sports Box Office had that for the entire card, but most significantly because it is the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world, Usyk Fury. You can go back and look at all of the stats from that, and then this upcoming Saturday on 5v5, which is incredibly important to the two respective promoters who are engaged in this like kind of rivalry for so many years, have put up 5 fighters apiece to represent their respective promotions, Queensberry and Matchroom. They're going to go at it, and there are going to probably be some close fights there. There's going to be some argument about who won, who had the best team, and then maybe in specific fights, who had the best fighter. We're excited, really, to be able to give that some context, to be able to, beyond what the judges say and their subjective scorecards, we can give some objective facts about what really happened. And then the audience and the fans can meld those two together in whichever way they deem appropriate and figure out what the most valuable information is on the night.
That is amazing, and I'm really, really looking forward to going and looking at that in more detail. Before we close up, could you just give me someone obviously coming into this as someone who's new in the boxing world, boxing media world, any tips you've got for someone like me coming into this, doing interviews and going around trying to go to fights and interview boxers and people? Any tips you could give me?
Yeah, I would say don't be intimidated, because this is so access oriented. Promoters, fighters, their representatives will try to intimidate you and tell you that don't ask this question, don't reference that, or we won't talk to you, or they'll try to give you the cold shoulder if they don't like your analysis. Like if you're someone who likes to predict fights or likes to post-fight breakdown or criticize fighters, they can take that personally. I've been banned by everybody. I've been banned by the best and the worst and all in between at some point or another. And they all come back around because initially, they think that they have the power because you need access. But the reality is that you have the power because you're bringing something unique to an audience that will follow you and want to see your content and want your opinion. And as long as you stay true to your audience, then all the fighters will maybe come and go, but you can't allow that to dictate what you do or how you do your job based on your relationship with them. That's just the truth of it. And some fighters may never talk to you again. They get, like that. But really, it isn't your job to make friends It's your job to produce something valuable for your audience. So be fair, but be yourself and be consistent, and don't allow someone to dictate to you how you do your job. As long as it is of value to your audience, then that is your only real boss.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for this interview. It's been really great having you to have a conversation with. I need to give a quick shout out to D-Rock, our sponsors. Please go onto their website, put in iBoxingHub 24 for 40% off any of their merchandise. Obviously, shout out to all my iBoxingHub brothers. You'll see this interview on the channel on YouTube. Just before we close, can you give us a till this day?
Oh, no, I'm not Deontay Wilder. He says that.
You don't-
But and everyone else says it too, but you won't hear me saying it. What I can give you is a seconds out on YouTube is where you will find my boxing coverage. Jabber AI is where you'll find the statistics that we're discussing, where you can go during a fight on YouTube, Jabber AI, to find real-time statistics being auto-populated while the fight is going on. I can't tell you how fun and experience that is when you see it. We want to give another shout out and a thank you to TNT Sports Box Office for being the network to premiere Jabber for the first time, not only the first time on a network, but on the 25-year long-awaited, undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. And then in a week's time from now on the 5v5, the biggest rivalry in England, Eddie Hearn versus Frank Warren, and Queensberry versus Matchroom. So, it's a significant time in boxing. It's a wonderful time to be a fan. The world is expanding, and the technology that's available now is enhancing our experience. I'm so happy to be a part of that, and so happy to see young journalists like yourselves with some tenacity and integrity and drive, hardworking, to get up on a Saturday night and pin me in on a Saturday afternoon in the park. That you did a great job with this interview, and I'm happy to see what the future holds for you. So keep at it and keep watching. Aiysha.
Thank you very much. Thank you.